Man, thank you for joining. I am Kevin O'Malley from Topo. Thank you for joining us for our second encore session from our Topo Virtual Summit. We're very pleased to have you today. We've got a great topic here with Craig Rosenberg, our co-founder and chief analyst of Topo, and most importantly, Jim Benton. Look at that timing. The CEO of
so good. Honestly, I mean, how good is that guy?
That was good. I mean, I couldn't have scripted that.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Craig.
You know what? We might just stop the webinar right now.
Yeah,
that was so great.
That was really impressive timing. And the CEO, of course. How you doing, Jim? I'm Kevin O'Malley. I'll be your moderator, your host at the beginning, and if we have time at the end, I'll come back for some questions. Craig will be here as well for some ongoing dialogue, and of course, we have Jim, the CEO, of course, here today to talk to us about the power of a connected sales enablement machine. Quick logistics: this session is recorded. We will be sending out the recording and will be available on the Encore Series site for forever. And you'll want to come back to it. It's going to be such a great topic. You'll want to come back to it maybe once a week, if not more. But at least you're here today to capture it live. And I want to thank certainly our sponsor, Chorus, who's been very supportive, not only for this Encore series, but also in Topo in general. They've been a great partner of ours for all of our events throughout the years, and we want to thank them for their ongoing support of the community of sales and bringing us together and to talk about the most important topics that are facing sales and marketing today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Craig and Jim to take over. We've got 30 minutes, so a lot to cover, gentlemen. But I think you're up for the task.
We are.
All right.
Kevin, I was waiting for my walk-up music, and so I guess I'm thrown off a bit, but I can do it without walk-up.
Hey, we still have the end. I'll be looking for some keywords throughout the session, and I'll find a great song to finish us out there.
Nice.
Okay. All right. So, this is what Jim and I are going to do today. So we're going to take some of the recent findings and data from the Topo analyst team. I'm going to present it to you guys. I'll give my brief perspective, and then Jim and I will have a conversation about each slide. And it's going to be Jim and I did this, I don't know, a couple months ago. It was amazing. I mean, for me, I think it's going to be amazing for everyone, but more as importantly, it's going to be really fun. Before we go, Jim, I know Kevin gave the intro, but is there anything else you want to say before we dive in about you and what you guys are trying to do or anything like that?
Craig, good to see you. Good to be back with you. We go back many years. A lot of history here, and super appreciate that. It's fun to be with friends when we're going through this. I'm thrilled that we're going through the data of your most recent report. This is a big time for enablement, for how we're helping to replicate these winning behaviors. And look, our goal is just to help companies to be their best in every interaction, to bring the voice of the customer back to every decision. And ultimately, it's about relationships, helping to build the relationships that drive revenue.
I love it. I will say one thing about Jim. You'll see, this is going to be fun. He's amazing. He's smart, but he does care, right? And you can see that in the message he just delivered. All right. So the first part that we're going to go through is we just recently, Jim was asking me this, we ran data with sales enablement leaders. I think there was about 200 of them during the pandemic. So from June through August. And so that's what we will talk through here in a minute. But before we do, let's just talk about, our view of some of the game change. I'm going to try to do this quickly because I know Jim's got a lot of opinions on this one. But what we try to do here is we just try to take some of the big topics that we're seeing from a tech stack perspective. Frankly, I know this is the sort of sales enablement market trends. Just talk about how things are changing. And look, I have gray hair, and so I've been through what it used to be like. So, for for a lot of us, this game change is like extreme game change. But I'd say I would just point to a couple of things. So we covered sort of training, which used to be this sort of reactive, ad hoc, get everyone together in the classroom, do it one time. Why can't you just hit your number, right? And now we're in this continual, just-in-time learning. It's dynamically updated, which I'm sure Jim's going to talk about all the time. That you can now train as you go. And that's part of also, these new advances in coaching. Conversation intelligence has completely changed the game. I mean, one thing we should talk about here, Jim, is did the tail wag the dog here? Like once CI came out, then we realized we always knew we needed a coach. It was just so hard. I mean, everyone blamed the sales leaders. They just didn't understand that it was just so hard. But now we can do it, and the leaders can be self-paced, not just everyone can be self-paced. We can use real data in these things. I'll just go through everything really quick. So content, right? We used to just send out data sheets. Now we can be dynamic as well. What's working, what's not working. We can switch those things out. We can do that instantaneously. The big thing, another big thing, and I think Jim will talk to this, is the rate of change is so fast. Every day is something new. Can we get information into the salespeople's hands, or across, I think actually, Jim, across the whole company?
Absolutely.
And I just say, digital adoption, a big deal as we move everyone to virtual, as we get them working into new tools, et cetera. How can we, instead of just telling them, hey, go do this, read this manual, how can we in motion help them leverage their tools better? And then tracking, I think Jim has a lot of opinions on how we've changed the tracking. That's another one, right? Where now that we can track stuff, we're learning a lot about ourselves. So I'd lay that out there, but Jim, I just love your thoughts on that's happening.
I think when you look at the from and the to, the period that we're in right now, working from home, has forced a transformation from the from to the to immediately. If you look at what we were doing in the froms, it doesn't work right now. We can't do in-person training. We can't really have a manager walk the halls and give us quick feedback or join us on an in-person meeting. Doesn't happen. The content, everything we did before this period, most of it had to be changed. We see an 86% increase in execs joining calls. We know that our messages had to change. So we need better content. And when you think about the knowledge sharing, we need to unlock the voice of the customer back to product leaders and marketing, because they're not getting the level of connection that they used to have when they're out in the field. So overall, there's been a massive transformation to, we need a better way to understand what's actually happening in our interactions, in the calls. We need a better way to coach, not just in general, but down to specific moments. And lastly, we need to really understand what the top reps are doing across the country and be able to surface those calls back to the new hires as the new form of tribal in a much more scalable way. And this is a big deal. The last one on here is the just-in-time app coaching. We'll talk more about this, but what Zoom rolled out last week at Zoomtopia, we were one of their featured launch partners. We teamed up with Zoom to launch a Zap. But Zoom is now allowing Enablement, us, to be in the actual Zoom experience, which means we can coach in real time. We can impact the outcome of a meeting and improve those relationships. These are fundamentally massive things, and it's all happened in a very short window.
All right. So a couple things. Yes, that was amazing. Yeah. So, the voice of the customer thing, you triggered something, which is, and since you're working with folks on this, the voice of the customer has probably made everyone better. I was just thinking, as you were saying, I was saying, God, product marketing, right? Our smartest folks that get sort of trashed on the most, right? Because they were always using, but now are you seeing more where they're getting to use the voice of the customer? That's making them better. Products probably getting better. Executives can hear these things. I mean, that's an organizational game change, isn't it?
It's very empowering to the go-to-market org, specifically sales and the CS teams, when instead of saying, I heard feedback on a new feature, or they kind of want this, you're sending them a 38-second clip of an exact moment with the video and the audio saying, this is what the customer said they actually want, or here's their feedback on our new pricing, or here's how they mentioned a competitor and specifically what they liked. That resonates for a CMO, for a product leader. And what we're finding is that they're building really structured dashboards. We just had one of our customers speaking in a customer event about a weekly Slack posting that they do with all of the key product insights that go company-wide. But instead of just reading it, you're watching it, you're feeling it, you're seeing it in the full entirety of the experience. Yeah. That is powerful. It's empowering.
I love that. And then the other one I wanted to dig in on, since you and I have been around for a long time, could we really juxtapose coaching? Like, what did you were one of the best leaders in revenue and sales that I know, but before we had these abilities, what was coaching like, or what, and what were you trying to get people to do? And then, what does it look like now? I'm just trying to get actually some of us old school guys doing a real from to on the coaching side.
I mean, from my perspective, in the past, coaching was about an onboarding experience, learning product, learning ways, learning methodologies, and then getting some time with your leader from time to time that was either deal-specific coaching or just kind of an overall assessment of how you did it. What was really missing from that was the ability to really pinpoint exact moments. When we win deals in the enterprise and this objection comes up, show me and let me listen to how we responded to it when it led to a winning deal. And let me see those 28 different moments from our top performers and from deals that won so I can learn from them. And I think that is a different level of coaching. We're learning and replicating these best behaviors, and it's connected to Salesforce. It's not just what we think is best. It's not, oh, I thought that sounded great. No, the deals that advanced from stage 2 to stage 6,
right,
talk about these pieces. It's data-driven outcomes that we're trying to replicate.
Yeah, that's definitely it. I don't know. I mean, I feel like we could probably spend the whole time on this slide because the game has changed. But we'll keep weaving it in, and let's look at this next piece of data. So, if we sort of there's a bit of an evolution in my opinion. So one is the phrase sales enablement, sort of finally having a more, I would say it's a little bit more strategic, right? Than if someone's called a trainer, someone's called I don't even know what we used to, product marketing. It was like a bullet on what they did. And now we're committing to sales enablement. So we asked one, we've seen this rise in dedicated sales enablement teams, right? And they're in sales. Sales leaders are willing to forsake a bag to hire a new sales enablement person. The teams are growing frankly, from 0 to whatever number. And now, even in these uncertain times over the next 6 months, there's only 5% are looking at decreasing. And for me, just knowing what uncertain times usually have is they usually don't, they take support people and they usually decrease them. Right, because you know how this is. We've been through the ups and downs. In this case, though, this team has become so strategic to the CRO organization that people are increasing or staying the same, even in these uncertain times. I think that's incredible. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, I think it's driven by the work from home. How do you keep a team connected? How do you keep everyone pointed the right direction? How do you even know what they're doing? It goes beyond just the RevOps side of looking at the forecast and the deals. It's how do we impact performance when we're not all together? And that is absolutely what Enablement's helping to drive.
I got to ask you this now. Ready? See,
ready. Lean in.
I'm not preparing him questions. He's too good. I got to give this. Well, what do you think happens when we come out of when the offices are fully opened up? What level of virtual do you think stays, and what do you think goes going forward?
Everything that I'm reading, including the new Microsoft work from home policy that came out over the weekend, is that we're going to come back slowly. We'll come back in a hybrid type motion. We'll come back. Reed Hastings thinks from Netflix will come back 4 days a week. Microsoft said just over 50% of the time back in the office. But it looks like it's going to be 2 to 3 days back slowly. And then, several years out, anybody's guess. We might bounce back to where we were as the world gets more competitive. But what we've proven is that at least during a pandemic, we're all highly productive from home and we can get our work done. And I think we need to prove that when the world opens up and we're busy again and there's a lot of distraction, can we still be as productive? And I'd say one last thing, Craig, is that there's a huge need for the human connection, and everyone's recognizing that we do need to come together as leaders, as teammates in some form to continue to build up trust and relationships. And I would say the fun part of work as well.
Yeah, I agree. I would argue, though, that we've seen, I think, let's say you take some of your customers who made swift adjustments to work from home. I mean, I've heard VPs of sales and CROs going, I think the guys are more productive now, but they have to be automated. I mean, obviously, right? Yep. Like I'm talking the folks that have built a true automated machine. Those guys, they feel like their sales reps are doing more calls, right? And there's more productivity, but they have tracking and they've enabled them in such a way that they can be really successful.
I think that the only other challenge there is that burnout is increasing, and we're seeing it in articles we read. We've tracked it on our side. We're seeing across calls the mentions of burnout increasing as well. And so that's the thing that we're going to have to watch for, is how do we recharge when we're all remote? I think that from your point, Craig, the data-driven motion of sales, the ability to stay connected, the ability to coach, the ability to onboard, that we've proven we can do wonderfully right now, and we're all very well positioned over the next year to do that. The human element, I think for all of us leaders, we need to continue to think about how do we recharge and keep it interesting.
Yeah. All right, so let's do this. I got to get through these. Okay. All right. I do have more surprise questions for you. So this is the sales enablement factors of success. So we asked these enablement leaders, they could choose, I believe, they could select 3. So that's why it doesn't add up to 100. And what are the factors that drive your success? I'll just mention a couple things and I'll let Jim riff. Is, one, the leadership buy-in and support. For me, I think that's a huge deal. I think, as Jim said, this is during the pandemic. So there's a driver here, but we saw this before, right? Was that sales leaders were willing to invest in enablement and in a big way. The third one, I got to tell you guys, the factors of success is a common question across all of our practices. And even though we study some of the most modern organizations that are highly automated, technology rarely makes the top 3. I thought that was really interesting here, that sales enablement technology was in the top 3. So those are my quick observations there, Jim. I don't know any thoughts on when you see this slide?
Well, look, you absolutely have to get sales leadership support. I've learned that in all my years doing this. I think one of the areas which has made why I think enablement is really becoming a huge focus and is working as well as it is. From a conversation intelligence part, we're not talking adoption anymore. And I've worked in past SaaS companies where you're trying to get people to use the product and they have to adopt it. We're out of that. We're beyond adoption. And I think that's what's made our category so big, is that it just shows up. Once it's set up through an administrator, it connects into a calendar, it connects into a CRM, and it shows up on your meetings. And so no one's thinking about it. It's just taking the perfect notes. It's capturing the full relationship. It's storing it back into Salesforce, and it's enabling leaders, these CROs and other leaders, to instantly get emails that are pushing them the right deals to coach on, the right conversations to look at. I think that's what's made this such a hit. I was a customer of Chorus in my past company. That's how I got familiar with this. And once you saw it, you realize from a technology standpoint that it's a 10x, that you would never go back, at least from my standpoint, to saying, that's a nice to have. No way. You need to know what's happening in these calls. That is where the magic is. And I think that's what's going on here, Craig, is that from a technology standpoint, we're seeing truly new technology enter the market. And that's why it's in the top 3.
Yeah, love it. All right, so let's look at the challenges. All right, so this is another one. So like I said, for every practice, we'll do strategies and challenges. So I thought this was interesting. I think tracking and communicating impact and budget. So we've got sales leadership support, but we need more resources. That's pretty interesting. Obviously, from a data perspective, anytime we have 2 runaways like this, right, that have this big gap here, that says a lot about what's happening in the market. I think we're making ground on tracking and communicating impact. I'd love to get Jim's thought on that, and then any other thoughts you have on this slide.
Yeah, I mean, look, today we're seeing a 92% increase in CFOs showing up in sales calls. So we absolutely need to be able to communicate the impact in order to get the budget and the resources. I think two things. Right now, from the work from home standpoint, it's very clear that the impact is massive if you can see what's happening in these calls. There's just no other way to understand the interactions your team is having. So it's become very black and white, very easy to understand from that standpoint. But the other part is just the outcomes. We're able to actually track and understand what the top performers are doing, replicate that. And what we're finding from the customer standpoint is they're coming back to us with, the faster onboarding or a higher win rate. Or specifically what I love is they find unique patterns that they found in their top reps do. They mention a certain part of their product, or they say certain things in the first 10 minutes of a call that drive a certain outcome. And then they replicate that across their sales force. And that is where we see sort of that strongest emotional response that helps us communicate the impact of CI.
Yeah, I love it. I think the 92% increase in CFOs on call. You had another data point earlier, I believe, about it wasn't CFOs. Were you talking about more C-level people on calls? Can you repeat? Yep. I'm sorry, I didn't write it down.
On the C-level leadership is up, or executive level leadership is up 108% on calls and 80% on the buying side. So it's significant in terms of, and this is all since the pandemic hit. So pre-pandemic, it's just much lower. And I think it's because it's easier to join a call. This is the only way to stay engaged. The access to leadership is just a click away on a Zoom right now.
That's amazing. All right. I love it. Okay. So we need to track impact with those data points. I think
adoption's always been the issue. I mean, there was talks before in the old days about sales disenablement. Too many tools, too many things, everyone having to learn them. I think the key is having the technology just work, be a bit more behind the scenes, and then surface the insights and push them to people. And that's a big driver to achieving these high impact states.
Yeah, love it. All right. Let's talk tech. All right. You may or may not have an interest in our tech data. So, okay. So here's the deal. So if you look at this data, we wanted to do a couple things. One was not just look at it as spend increase, but look at a spend increase with new vendors, or, am I sort of ramping spend with my existing? So you can see that there's a 46% want to make. This is for 6 months, taken in June to August. So you're thinking, till the end of the year. Increased spend is actually, if you look at that, that's 40% plan to increase spend, with 25% introducing new vendors in the next 6 months. Okay, that's very strong market, right?
Yep.
And no plans is like 20%. But that's very low. So anyway, I think generally speaking, close to not a full bull market, but a very bullish market, Jim. And most people that have invested, it ain't going away. I'm sure you see that, right, in your retention rates right now, or growth rates. But anyway, it's pretty exciting times in sales enablement tech. I don't know what are your thoughts when you see this data?
The big thing that jumps out to me is that the increasing spend with new vendors is significantly higher than the existing. So it's not that we're just using existing technology and giving it to a wider group of employees. There's been a technology change, and that's what's going on. I think sales enablement is finally here. What we've been doing for the past 15 years, and as we've transformed it, it just has fundamentally changed now that we're in the interactions. We can do it at scale. And that's why you're seeing such a focus, 25% on new vendors versus just, going with the old vendors and trying to roll out more licenses.
All right. I have a crazy question for you. I think because I'm looking at, so the spend increase is solid, right? With new vendor. I mean, that's close to bullish. When you look at the conversations with CFOs, this is really important. I mean, we've seen this for a lot of other spaces where they can't get the deal done because they can't get, because, look, there's some places where a 5K deal has to get signed off by the CFO now, right? There's definitely a change. And do you feel like, and maybe you see this in the data, that CFOs are getting the sales enablement stack and understanding the value, or, how are they, because it has to be, right? Because people are buying this stuff, right, through the pandemic, and it continues to increase. Is it, what do you see as it resonates with the finance people and CFOs? I'm just really curious there.
One of the interesting stats was that when a CXO, so pick a CFO, is on a deal that wins, they talk 8.5% more. So when you look at the deals that we won when we had the CXOs on versus when we lose, they talk more. So that's one thing to think about, is how do we make sure we're getting them engaged and talking. We also find that we're typically having about 5 engaging questions when a CXO is on for the deals that go. But I think it gets down to making sure we have visibility. Do we even know that we're multi-threading these deals? And that's a big area of when we can track the conversations. We can track the seniority of a conversation and look at, are we multi-threading? Are we achieving that? Are we getting multi-threaded into senior leadership? Let's pinpoint right down to the senior folks. What are they saying about a deal? What are the warning signs that we're picking up? And are we, communicating the value? Are we using slides or demoing? Just understanding how much demo we do for them is also a pretty big, point. One last data point, Craig. I was just looking at the stats we share in the weekly briefing, but win rates increased by more than 15 points, or 38%, when the C-suite is involved in the buying process. We all know that in our gut, but that data just says how critical it is that we do engage the C-suite.
Will you say that data, just for emphasis, say that data point again? That is truly remarkable.
Yeah, the win rates increased by more than 15 points. So basically 38% increase when a C-suite is involved in the buying process. So we need to know, first off, were they involved? Did they actually show up on a call? How much talk time did they have? What did they say specifically? We need to be able to track that. That's what CI is helping to drive, which is different than the training aspect of just coaching people up. Now we need to know what happens in the moment and with which types of participants and how we're engaging them.
That is amazing. All right. So I just want to combine that data, which I thought was, did you say that the CFO, we want to see if the CFO asks 5 engaging questions?
Deals that progress to the next stage include 5 engaging questions asked by the rep to the CXO during the meeting. So it's
he or she is getting, they're getting the CFO to engage. That's incredible.
That's right. And if they do engage, they will talk 8.5% more on the deals that we track that go to closed won. So it's an interesting data point.
It's an amazing data point. I mean, this part of the, it's part of what you're talking about is we can prove all the things we've been telling, in some cases, someone would tell you, I know, like all CROs, I already knew that, right? That's what they tell, they're our buddies, right? They tell us that all the time, she'll be like, I knew that, but now we have the data to prove it. And I think that's amazing. All right. So let's talk about this. I think, so what we do is we will take categories and we will rate them on the impact that they had on the business and the experience. Like, did the vendor live up to what they said they were going to do, and how did we go do that? Things that like adoption and those factor into that rating. Okay, we asked them to do a rating between 1 and 5. You could see that in this last batch of data that conversation intelligence is the leader in impact and experience across the 5 categories we track in sales enablement technology. So I know you're going to have a comment on that one.
Yeah, I just think what's interesting on the enablement side, and why I think conversation intelligence is at the top, is that reps like it. They find it incredibly valuable. And when the frontline seller, the frontline CSM finds this to be a tool that they can't live without, that really helps. And I think when you drill that down, you say, all right, so the rep loves it, the leader loves it, the CEO loves it. You're finding that, that's why it's at the top. And I think from an experience standpoint, the lack of having to drive behavioral change, we don't have to train anybody to use it. It just shows up and then surfaces, is why I think you're seeing it be so high on the experience side, as well as the impact. We're removing those frictions. You look at like sales readiness, where it has fairly high impact, but low experience. And I think that's because, sales readiness is watching canned videos or other things that you're being trained on that are stale. Having the ability to watch the call that we just closed a deal today. I want to see the closing call of yesterday, and having that at your fingertips and the whole team can watch it when we do the Slack win alert. That's true sales readiness. That's the just in time showing what worked yesterday. How do we replicate that? And that's driving an incredible experience for everybody on the front lines.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When we can add value to the rep, right, then it's all over, right? And they love it. Actually, you made me think of something. I know Kevin's going to come on. So what would you say? I mean, how many conversations do you analyze on you're the CEO per week, let's say? And then you just gave us an example of how you would use the closing call. How often are you surfacing conversations with the team? I'd love to hear that. I think, one thing is we love the tech, but like, how are people using it? And I'd love to hear how you're using it.
I mean, when I send my board emails out, I will usually include a couple snippets of, here's the new platform we launched, and let's hear from the customer of what they said. Internally, we're clicking on snippets of the customer's voice. Almost, 5 to 10 times a day. You're in Slack, you're clicking on it, you're clicking on an email surface. It's high. And what they are is they're snippets. It's not about just living and watching the full recording. It's finding those moments and learning from them.
That's amazing. And then when you, on the news zaps with Zoom, there's nothing anybody needs to do there. Right? Or is that going to be another fast adoption sort of addition to your product?
I think it'll be fast. Zoom will be launching that at the end of the year, is what they've announced. But they've done a beautiful job integrating it right in the toolbar, and with a click, it appears.
Okay.
And once again, I think it'll be one of those areas where people in the meeting will say, I want to use this. This is adding value and helping us to run a better meeting. And therefore, I would expect high adoption. But it'll just show up.
Amazing. Yeah, I just want to warn you, when Kevin shows up with his chess pieces in the back, that means you and I are in trouble.
Nice.
Well, this does make me the pawn.
Oh, jeez.
Sorry, it's a bad dad joke.
So, Kevin, what do you think? That was cool, huh? I told you.
It was. I really. The insights are obviously what people love, and they're probably taking screenshots and sharing it. But I really like the message about coming together and thinking about, the path forward and how to keep your team connected throughout, what we're going through right now. But obviously the insights are incredible as well.
Yeah, that was something interesting on Jim's sort of speaking the truth there, right? Which is like, look, he sells technology that would allow you to stay virtual for however long you needed to. But there is a reality here, which is, we have to balance that, because we do we do have to find that way to make that human connection still. And I think when Jim, you're talking about sort of the data on the restlessness that's happening, part of that is just pure human connection. As you said, the office is, that's how we get to, we make those sort of true connections. It's key to culture. Do we need to be there all the time? No, not anymore. Nope. But we need to continue to enhance that human side as well.
Yeah, we all miss it, I think. And clearly we're getting a lot of work done remotely, and things are working. But adding that human element, it's the fun side of work.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, there were some questions around the data side. We'll certainly follow up with that person about some of the sample sizes of our research. We'll be sure to connect with some other of the questions that we had.
Yeah, he also wanted some of Jim's data that he mentioned, so we can make sure he gets that as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I got that one. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jim. Appreciate the time with us today, and looking forward to sharing this. This will be posted on our Encore